It's hard to imagine that it was only 5 years ago that Donald Sterling was banned from the NBA. It feels like a lifetime ago.
An audio recording allegedly of Clippers owner Donald Sterling making racist remarks to his girlfriend is being investigated by the NBA.
The statements by the owner of the Los Angeles Clippers speak for themselves.
He shouldn't own a team anymore.
There's no room for that in our game.
If you ask anyone on the Clippers about him now, it's a touchy subject. If they could, they'd erase his memory completely. But there is no erasing Donald Sterling from the Clippers' history or the NBA's. And we shouldn't want to.
Barely got iron and they kick it out of bounds.
Donald Sterling's 30-plus years in the league were largely a dark spot. His team became a joke. But while we were all busy laughing, we were missing some disturbing signs. The owner seemed to take that term very literally.
That made me feel like I was a possession. You could say different degrees of like a plantation owner mentality.
Said that Sterling had a plantation mentality.
And there was always the sense that he had a plantation mentality.
There were the sexual harassment lawsuits, multiple housing discrimination lawsuits, and then there were Donald's own words.
And you're allowed to Instagrams. You don't have to have yourself with walking with black people. Why publicize it on the Instagram and why bring it to my games?
When TMZ released that disturbing tape of Sterling making racist comments to his mistress, it was a shock, but it wasn't a surprise. This wasn't any different than the Donald Sterling we'd known for decades, but this was on tape. And the world was changing, even if Sterling was not.
Thank you all for being here. Apologize.
It was Adam Silver's first big test as commissioner, a moment that will define his legacy as much as any other.
Effective immediately, I am banning Mr. Sterling for life from any association with the Clippers organization or the NBA.
Weeks later, the Clippers were sold for $2 billion to the former CEO of Microsoft, Steve Ballmer. The balance of power was shifting in the NBA. Old owners were bowing out, and new owners like Ballmer were taking their place, bringing in new views to the association. And the owners weren't the only ones changing the landscape. Players were finding their voices too, speaking directly to millions of fans on social media. It was a newfound power, and they felt a responsibility to use it.
Shot in the chest! We want to run!
The 17-year-old Trayvon Martin, who was shot and killed, well, the Miami Heat took to social media. LeBron James posted this picture.
Emotional day for all of us. Taking that picture, and we're happy that we're able to shed light on the situation.
Sterling's ban ushered in a new era. The Clippers are no longer a joke. Steve Ballmer doesn't even want to be called the team's owner. He's the chairman. And he brings money and a desire to win, two things Donald Sterling never did.
I have these notes, but I gotta say I'm just fired up to be here today. It's pretty cool, pretty damn cool. Woo!
Players know their power and value in the league, and they're pushing the limits of it. Paul George requested to be traded with 2 years left on his contract so he could play with Kawhi Leonard on the Clippers. And Adam Silver has to balance the trust he's built with the players with the interests of the owners. And if Kawhi Leonard and Paul George can break the Clipper curse, they will undo the futility and frustration of the last 30-plus years, not just the last 5. Whether anyone is admitting to it or not, all that weight, including Donald Sterling, rests on their shoulders.
Wow, that's great. Our Ramona Shelburne here with us now. Ramona, you touched on this in the piece, so maybe you can help us put it more in context. Donald Sterling's reputation, as mentioned before, preceded him. He'd been doing it for 30 years. Why did that audio tape at that time be his undoing, if you will?
Well, for 30 years, people had known he was like a blight on the NBA, but they never had that smoking gun. They never had the tape where you could hear it. And it gave Adam Silver in a way, it was wartime powers. Like, nobody knew Adam Silver had the power to ban Donald Sterling for life. I remember covering it at the time. And it was, we thought maybe he could suspend him. We thought maybe he could fine him $1 million. But to ban him for life, That wasn't in the NBA Constitution.
And that was also Adam Silver's first real act as the commissioner, was it not? So that's a lot of pressure. He comes out, he sets the tone. And in your opinion, what was the reaction from the players in the NBA league-wide?
Well, here's the thing. I don't think anybody realized how close the NBA was to shutting down in response to this. Andre Iguodala is flat out on the podcast saying, I was ready to shut this down. I was ready to shut the whole thing down. The Warriors were ready to walk out. The Clippers were ready to boycott. And it was Doc Rivers, Adam Silver, and Kevin Johnson at the time, who was head of the Players Association, who kept things together just long enough for Adam Silver to ban him for life. And by the time Adam did that, everybody said, well, actually, that was exactly what they wanted. But if Adam Silver doesn't do that, and I don't think it would have waited one more day. I don't think it would have waited past that Game 5. If he didn't do that morning, I don't think the players play.
Wait, help me understand this. You said most people didn't know that Adam Silver had the power to ban him or make him sell the team. So if the players were going to boycott, what was the end game for them? What was the result that they wanted?
And, Mark Spears, who is from the Undefeated and is pretty extensively quoted throughout episode 4, and, there was a lot of people who were disappointed that they didn't boycott, that they didn't protest and walk out, that they were up in Oakland. This is like the home of the Black Panthers. This is Tommy Smith. This is John Carlos. I mean, this would have been an iconic moment. I was talking to Jamal Crawford the other day, and he says, this would have outlived all of us. This would have been our legacy if they would have boycotted. But, I've done a lot of thinking about this, like what would have happened if they did boycott, right? And it might have been a bridge too far. Like, I don't know if the league could have then worked with the players in partnership to get this resolved if they would have boycotted. And if they boycott one game, does the rest of the league boycott? Does the rest of the playoffs go on? Nobody really knows that answer. It's an incredible game theory of like what would have happened. But the NBA was very close to shutting down, and Adam Silver jumped in with the help of Doc Rivers, who really was a civil rights leader for us in those 4 days.
Wow.
To keep the league on track, but also just keep everybody together.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For highlights and analysis, check out the ESPN app. And for live streaming and premium content, check out ESPN+.